Hi everyone, it's Jen again. Let me first wish you a happy New Year's. I hope we all have a good 2026 year coming up. I thought this week it might be a good time to just do a little bit of a retrospective, talk about how 2025 went from a game development point of view, how I did with my personal goals, and what my personal goals will be roughly my New Year's resolutions, I guess you could say, for 2026. I was going back and trying to just kind of look over my game development journey so far on itch.io as a small solo developer who is only doing this as a passion hobby. I feel like my experiences as somebody who's a full-time working adult might be more relatable. I guess that's why I keep trying to go over my story of what I do transparently, because I feel like a lot of smaller creators don't really make much of a voice for themselves. Maybe it's because our stories are not all that interesting because we haven't made it as far as the level of recognition and financial success that a lot of people would, I guess, go into game development hoping for, and those are maybe the stories that people want to hear about. And these more individual stories of just self-enrichment as our success are probably not that inspiring. But I guess I just feel like I want to throw this out there because the first projects, the first years of doing this can really feel like you're just shouting out to the void. And that is why in my development logs that I started writing in June of 2020, when I started posting my first releases for Soul Union, it really just felt like screaming out into the void. And so that's how I address my devlogs, is greetings internet void. And I think that you have to almost become comfortable with that as an expectation, because otherwise the journey's gonna feel pretty lonely and pointless for a lot of us who are just doing this as a hobby. I don't know if there's a formula that you can follow to definitely get financial success and recognition and virality and all that kind of stuff. Certainly I'm not the channel to look towards if that's the type of advice that you're going for. I have my own skepticism on those types of channels that make those types of promises. So I guess what I'm hoping to achieve by just being transparent with my journey is that you can also have some people look at your project. So I think at least from a hobbyist point of view, that's probably the biggest fear, is that I'm gonna make this thing and nobody's gonna look at it and nobody's gonna comment on it, and it's just gonna get swallowed up by the infinite void of the internet that's constantly churning out content. And what I make is not going to make a difference whatsoever. I don't know that I can say any of my stuff makes a difference, but I can at least say that I have been growing a community and an audience over time. It's very small, it is very niche, but I am very happy to be where I'm at right now. And I won't necessarily say that I wasn't happy to be where I was back in 2020 when I was shouting out to the void and not getting any replies whatsoever. I think that you have to find a place where you're comfortable in doing this and building that resiliency, because the most of us, when we go into this journey of game development, we have to fail a lot before we get to a point where any of our projects are honestly worth looking at. You have to go through that awkward adolescent phase of just everything being awful and garbage and trash, to get to the point where you start to refine your process to a point where it's legible to other people. I have, my own strong skill sets as an artist and as a storyteller going into my development journey. So certain aspects of presentation I have an advantage of already failing many times. So I had some level of refinement to that. And still, it really felt like I was just kind of like throwing my stuff out there for just the sake of doing it. And that kind of, I guess, resiliency that you build from just kind of shouting out to the void, it makes a difference. If you can still work through that phase of development, I think that it will be an enduring resilience that will help you get through your projects that are unsuccessful even after you've reached some level of success. For success, I don't mean, at least for myself, because I've never reached any level of like virality or anything close to that. Success to me is like having some people reply. I'm shouting out to the void and there's a few voices that heard me and are like saying hi back. That's that's a huge level of success, I feel like, for a lot of us small creators. So even then, you still run into road bumps where you can make something and it doesn't resonate with anybody and you're still kind of shouting out to the void again. Let me talk about 2025 as an example. So 2025, I finished Arcane Dice Wars. That was a huge milestone for me. I had started development on Arcane Dice Wars in the November of 2022. So you can kind of see here by my my little analytics chart, I wasn't keeping track of my stats on itch.io at all for the first 2 years. Now, Soul Union thankfully did not, even though it was my first release on itch.io, it did not get swallowed up to be forgotten by the void forever. I was fortunate enough to be spotlit, I believe, on the fresh section for Soul Union, and it gave this project, I think, just enough visibility that it trickled in. It had like persisting trickle in. Well, let me go back on that, because I think that it had trickle in traffic for its entirety, of like handful of views every day here and there, handful of downloads every week. And that kind of persistent trickle is what got it some attention enough to be spotlit, and then that getting spotlit gave it a little bit of an extra boost that might translate to a couple dozen followers, a couple, 100 extra downloads, a couple 100 or 1,000 extra views. But all that, I guess, attention that it got in the spotlight did not really do anything to its overall lifetime views and longevity. I think that it always had that persistent trickle. So I don't want people to mistake that, oh, you need to get spotlit in order to like be seen at all, or you need to be spotlit in order to like not be forgotten by the internet. I think that if your project has that level of merit that warrants having people want to play it, even if it's niche, or maybe because it's niche, it will have that little persistent audience that it will accumulate over its lifetime. And it probably will not disappear forever. If it disappears within the first initial launch, as in it doesn't even get like that small reoccurring traffic, it's probably just gonna get disappeared. At least that was my experience with Hungry and some of my other demos that just kind of like did not get any traction. I would say that EXG is kind of like on that cusp of like not getting any traction. If I had continued to development in its current state, I could possibly force it to resurrect and have like a trickle in. But I don't think that it would ever reach the level of my more successful projects that had that initial resonance to start with. I'm going to use these 3 projects to talk about what it means to be spotlit and how it's really just a megaphone, in my experience, towards whatever trend was already going on. So with Soul Union and Arcane Dice Wars, they were both fortunate enough to get added to like a fresh collections on itch.io. And when they did so, again, there was a uptick in traffic for a few days. And that the uptick was pretty large as far as like the impressions go, but the higher the impressions went on Soul Union and Arcane Dice Wars, the lower the click-through rate was. So both Arcane Dice Wars and Soul Union struggled to be above a like 1% click-through rate. In fact, I think that they both are resting at somewhere around like 0.6 or 0.7% click-through rate. And so when they were spotlit in the fresh collections, that click-through rate went down even further, I think, to like maybe like as low as like 0.3% click-through rate when you started to get into the hundreds of thousands of impressions. And so those impressions that they got for being highlighted were great. I was very appreciative of it. But in the long scheme of the project's trajectory, it didn't make that much of a difference. What made more of a difference than getting spotlit was just seeing the projects to completion, updating with the devlogs, all that, like showing resiliency to that very niche and core audience, is kind of what drove that. It's what built the overall visibility of the projects and traffic to the projects in the long term. And so whatever percentage of the lifetime analytics that were provided by those spotlights was just in line with the trajectory of the projects themselves. So I don't want to say that like definitely sticking to a project is going to resurrect a project that is just not resonating with people. I think that the trajectory from the start was a good indicator of where it was going to go in hindsight. And I'm going to just say, again, in my experience, looking over the successes of my projects as opposed to the failures of my projects, they were kind of always consistent from the start. Certainly you do get a boost from the initial launch, but whatever your click-through rate is with that initial launch, I found to be fairly indicative. Like, it kind of settles within like the first week, and then it's kind of indicative of how things will go from there, and you might get a little boost every time you make a major update, but it's going to have that same overall traffic, it seemed to me. And that traffic will build over time, and that traffic that it created that trickle-in traffic is going to outweigh whatever like the boost traffic is. At least on my experience on itch.io. I have never had anybody stream my games that has led to external referrals. Most of all my referrals have been within itch.io. I have tried doing the making a thread on Reddit, having social media. I've never found any traction with those things, and there might be some people who do, but I can't speak from that experience, and I've found that just working on my projects and pouring my heart into that has been more effective use of my time. I don't particularly like trying to advertise. So that's going to bring me to Allele, the current project that I'm working on, where it's been kind of an outlier from all my other projects, and it's also been recently spotlit in the fresh section. When Allele initially launched, it had a higher click-through rate than my other projects, and it's been able to maintain an above 1% click-through rate. Which doesn't seem like a large difference to me between Arcane Dice Wars being like 0.6, 0.7, and Allele being like 1.1 or 1.2. But it does make a big difference, I feel like, in the long-term trajectory of the project, because Allele, I released it in October, and it's already starting to catch up with the lifetime analytics of Arcane Dice Wars, and when it got spotlit, it was kind of like a magnifier that I noticed that because once the impression starts to reach the hundreds of thousands, if you can maintain that 1% click rate or above, it kind of shows that that project has the potential for a little bit more broader appeal. Now, would I say that Arcane Dice Wars, like, I regret making Arcane Dice Wars as opposed to Allele? I wouldn't say that at all. I would say that I'm equally happy with all the projects that I've been working on. I do feel like there was something with EXG that was kind of just disorganized in its presentation and execution that I want to rework. I want to figure out thematically what I was going for a little and make that more apparent. I want to go harder after whatever that particular theme was, because I feel like there's just a lot of obfuscation that it just doesn't feel real clear. It feels confusing, even from myself as the creator. So I think I need to pin down more what it was going for thematically and go harder after that particular aesthetic and communicate it more clearly from the get-go. Where I'm planning on going for 2026. I am going to finish Allele. I do plan on having it be around 9 chapters. I do plan on doing monthly updates, although when it comes to the 9th final chapter, I'm projecting there to be around 12 endings, and so that will probably take me at least 2 or 3 months to wrap up everything. So I'm thinking that Allele will take me the first half of 2026, because I do also plan to take a break somewhere between now and the endings to make a little side game, a little mini game. just because Allele is like very story heavy, very traditional visual novel kind of programming, and I get a little bit bored sometimes with that, and I want to just kind of pivot to doing something a little bit more experimental, just to like have fun with solving some of these coding problems. So the side project that I have in mind is going to be called Allele Devil's Hand. It's going to be just kind of a little bit of a goofy side game where we play a modified version of poker with the characters, and so it's really more of a bluffing game. When we look at the functionality of it, so I have simplified the idea of poker. For those who don't know me, I grew up in a family that played a lot of card games. My late father was a former gambling addict who gave up gambling, but he still really enjoyed card games. So I grew up with a lot of different traditional card games, from poker to rummy to bridge to cribbage to hearts to spades, all those good trump style of card games. And so I think that a part of me wanted to go back towards that idea of like a simple kind of like 1 versus 1 card games from just a lot of memories from my childhood. And I wanted to make it a simpler version, so instead of going for the traditional poker, we're doing just 3 suites. I decided to make it wands, swords, and cups to represent the power, empathy, and logic mechanics of the base game. And the last card there is the devil's card. So this is kind of representative of the devil, or Jonas in Allele origin. That this is a bit of like the Joker card, except for in this game it is the I beat you card. So if either player has the devil card trumps all other hands. Having it limited to 3 suits instead of 4 means that there's no 4 of a kind. There's only 3 of a kind and 2 pairs. I decided to not have anything like a straight or a straight flush. We're just gonna have a flush. So the order of winning hands in this game is gonna be devil card trumps everything, then flush, which would be a 4 card, all swords or all wands or all cups, and then of course, like if you had the unlikely outlier that you had 2 flush, then whoever's got the high card, with the aces being high, and then up to 9. So instead of having like Joker, Queen, and King, I'm just keeping it simple, up to 9 cards in a suit. And then we'll have, after flush will be 3 of a kind, after 3 of a kind will be 2 pairs, after 2 pairs will be single pair, and then if nobody has any pairs, then you get whoever has the high card would win. So I have all those conditions in a function that's going to be checking to see. I've also have, like the deck itself along with all the cards. So there's a list that has all the cards in there, and then when you draw a card, that card gets removed from the list to make sure that you're not duplicating cards. There is a redraw function, as well as the opponent will have, in this case the opponent will be Isaac for just this test. He has his own programming to draw cards based on what his cards are, and there is a little bit of randomness to that, so that the player will not be able to predict what his card hand is based on how many cards he's drawing with 100% accuracy every time. So what does this card game look like when we open the game? This is the bare bones mechanics that I start out with. We're going to deal the cards. Already with the initial hand, we've lucked out, have the devil's hand, so we're definitely going to win. Now with this game, it's going to be more of a bluffing game, so you will have like currency to bet. And the idea is that you want to try, if you have the winning hand or you think you have the winning hand, you want to try to get the opponent to bet more. So you want to be careful with how you escalate your bet. And then if you have a losing hand or you think you have a losing hand, whether or not you want to try to bluff your opponent into folding first, or if you want to play it on the safer side. So the betting mechanic is going to be more of the gameplay strategy than the actual like playing the cards themselves, but I haven't implemented that part yet. So this is like telling us what the program is registering as our card combination. Right now, this total here is to, if there was a tiebreaker, whoever had the higher total value of cards would end up breaking the tiebreaker. Our highest value card is an ace. Our highest value card is the devil, which is has the 11 value. And then the card combination that is registering is that we have the devil card, which trumps all other card combinations. This is showing what our opponent has, because this is for testing purposes. So right now they have a pair. Their highest is an 8, and their total card value in case of a tie is 31. Isaac is redrawing 2 cards. We can decide how many cards we want to redraw. I will go ahead and select these 3 for redraw. Doesn't really matter as long as we keep the devil's card, because there's only one devil's card, so we know we're definitely going to win. And that is what the result is. Can start drawing again. Oh my goodness, I am just like the luckiest person, because again I draw the devil card. I think it ends up, I forget what the percentages were, but it's actually not that common to continuously have it. Yeah, that was a real lucky streak, at least from what I've been playtesting. I mean, there's a good chance. I think it's something like, I have to go over the percentages again. 25% chance that the devil card will be in play at all. But from there, it's like a 50% chance whether or not you have it or whether or not Isaac has it. So, yes, I do plan on having different, I guess, strategies for the different characters. I do plan on having Isaac be an opponent, and then Simon and then Anthony as being different opponents. I do plan on having their expressions kind of try to give away what their cards might be like or what their current strategy is like. And then I do plan on having it be a penalty game, so whoever wins at the end gets to impose a punishment on the other player. Just for like fun, goofy story lore reasons. That is where I'm going with this. Oh, what am I doing? I have all these wands and swords, but I also have a pair. So do I want to go for a flush or do I want to go for a pair? I think I'm going to go for a pair to be safe. And we won because Isaac didn't even have a pair. Yay. That's what a lot of rounds are like, actually. Looks like he and I both have a pair. I have 3 cups. So this is always like an interesting conundrum. Do I want to try to have like that 1 in like 33 chance that I will get another cup and get a flush? Or do I want to keep the pair? Let's just, for sake of fun. Nope. Lost it. And we lost the round. Okay. Yeah, that's gonna be my my little coding challenge that I'm going to be running in the background as I'm still working on the main game Allele. And whether or not I have any other side games to Allele, I haven't decided on that yet, but there's always the potential for it if the inspiration strikes me. Otherwise, I am still working through how I want to try to improve EXG. I think it's going to get a complete overhaul. I would like to try to make all my games browser available for at least a demo going forward. I think that EXG has a lot of unnecessary bloat. I think that I can simplify a lot of things about it. And I think that the overall aesthetic needs to be rehauled in order to kind of give a little bit more of that dystopian future feel to it. In my mind, when I was creating EXG, I was thinking that if the world of EXG actually existed, the aesthetic would somewhat be like trapped in a time where there were still, I guess, consumers to please. So that's kind of why it doesn't really have much of a futuristic vibe, is because at some point people just kind of stopped having to sell to people, so to speak, and so the world just kind of got stuck in a certain aesthetic because there was no longer like a bunch of people to try to innovate. And I do think in a lot of ways, especially with a lot of how, I guess, redundant, how iterative, AI is and everything. I think that there's like definitely a case for that being like a more realistic future aesthetic, at least at how things are going. But, it doesn't communicate it doesn't communicate the ideas visually that I wanted to express, even if I do think that it would maybe be a more realistic future. I have to think about it. I think I need to provide some contrast. Okay, I think I've rambled on long enough. Yay 2026. Let's hope it's another good year. I'm gonna focus on game dev because that's what gives me that motivation to wake up in the morning and makes me feel excited for life. I hope that whatever your New Year's resolutions are, best of wishes towards them, and don't forget to enjoy the process, because that is really where we're spending the most of our time when we're doing these types of things. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.